This is Digital Trends Live. I'm Greg Nibbler. Thanks for joining us wherever you are. We appreciate it. Hit that subscribe button because we like to keep you updated on all kinds of things, including things that have to do with your work and your life, your home life, both together. That's what it's called. It's work life. And of course, we are joined by Ciara Pressler to talk about some important things to help us all out. And I think something a lot of people are thinking about right now is their resumes and some things that you should probably know about that. And Ciara, thank you. Where do we want to start with this?
Well, let's talk about something that can haunt your resume, which is a resume gap. If you have taken time off or you've been unemployed for a while, how do you handle that gap in time on your resume?
And that is something that, probably for a lot of people is a concern, whatever the reason may be, because you go in there, I can only imagine for an interview, and it's like, well, what were you doing with this time? So I guess let's walk through like why that's important and what some different ways are that you can handle that.
Sure. And a resume gap isn't necessarily a bad thing. It's a lot more common now than it used to be that people have taken time off for good reasons. It's not necessarily shameful if you were laid off or fired and you were out of work for a little while. But there's also really positive life reasons that people have a resume gap. Maybe you were getting an education, maybe you were traveling, maybe you were parenting. The whole point is that you want to tell the story in a way that puts you in control of why it all makes sense and why you're still a great candidate.
I love that. So yeah, presenting the story of why that happened. And I guess to start off with, how do you go about doing that to make sure that you're shining the right light on whatever the reason was?
Well, so if you're in a gap right now, what you want to do is stay in the game, stay sharp, keep your skills up. So even if you're not working, find a way to stay engaged. So there's plenty of online courses you could take. You can do things that build your skill set, or even volunteer, do some freelance work, some pro bono work. It's a great way to keep building up some things you can put on your resume so that you are on top of what you will need to have when you go in for your job interview. So, even having time off and not working is no excuse not to keep building your skills and building your experience. Now, if you had
So
a
don't.
resume gap,
Oops, sorry.
yeah, if you had a resume gap in the past, it's okay. You can make up for it. I know early in my career when I was figuring out what I wanted to do next, I did a lot of gigs and a lot of freelance. And so what I did, because there was a lot of spots in there, is maybe I said, from this year to this year, I did various projects or freelance marketing. And then I put each company as bullet points under that. So you can kind of cover up a spread in your resume by grouping things together that were more gig oriented, side hustles, all of that.
That's great advice. 'Cause I mean, so many people do have work on a gig side of things where it's like one quick job here, but if you pile them all up, it looks great. Also, I like the idea of if you are in a point where you're not working, try to stay away from watching Netflix all day long, and still find things to do to fill that gap. There's still a lot of stuff that can happen. That's great. Going from that and just talking about resumes in general, which can be challenging sometimes for people to make sure that you're doing it right. Like, what other kinds of tips do you have in association with this?
Well, your resume is about stating the facts, and so do not bend the truth here. Of course, you can tell the truth in the best light, but this is not a time to lie. I've heard people say everyone lies on their resumes. I don't. No one I know does. Don't do it. It'll catch up with you. But you can tell the story in the best light. And if you have a gap, maybe you had the opportunity to go travel for a year, go on a massive road trip. That's great. And I think people will really appreciate that. Use your cover letter or your intro email to explain that and talk about what you learned that is relevant to the role you're applying for.
That's great. So take all of that can be usable. Like you said, don't make anything up, but shine the right light on what it is that you did during that time. I mean, that's great because that's not something I would think of like, oh, I went on this trip. Well, maybe there's something that applies. What else should we know?
Well, I think that if you're looking for an opportunity to stay busy, stay engaged, it doesn't have to be that formal. I think because you have nothing to lose right now, it's a really good time to go to your dream organization, maybe a dream company that maybe wouldn't be a fit for a full-time job, but say, listen, I've got 10 hours a week or, 20 hours a month, and I'd love to volunteer for you. I have experience with communications and I have experience as a developer or something like that. Is there a project I could help you with? Because I want to stay engaged while I'm on my job search. And let me tell you, anyone who is a director of a nonprofit, anyone who's a small business owner, a startup would welcome the help. I know I did a lot of interning and freelance projects and volunteering when I was in my career transition, and that was some of the most rewarding experience and great resume bullet points for my career.
That's, yeah, again, great advice, as you always give us here on the show. But I like that idea, too, for people who maybe aren't thinking about that. Like, you can go and be a part of, these organizations that maybe you have a dream for, and who knows, maybe that turns into a job, too, at some point. But let's give everybody else, though, some more guidance on where they can go to get more help for their careers and everything else that you do.
Absolutely. Well, this advice is straight out of my first book, Exit Stage Right. It's on Amazon.
Nice.
It is a career handbook geared toward people who are going from creative careers like in the arts, how to develop a career vision for a total career transition. You can get that over on Amazon, and you can see all of our latest advice and insights on creating success in your life and in your work at pregamemagazine.com and pregamehq.com.
Fantastic, Ciara Pressler. Always with great advice for us. And these work-life segments are up at Digital Trends too. So go back through, take a look at all of them. There's advice no matter what stage you're at in your career or whether you're even not in a career right now, there is advice for you. And Ciara, as always, great to see you. Have a great weekend.
Happy holiday.